Apostrophe CMS onboarding series. Pages, fragments, and localization. In the last video, we discussed modifying our project homepage. We altered the existing starter kit page, first changing the schema field to contain two area type fields containing the core widgets. Then we altered the nunchucks template to display those areas using the area helper tag. In this video, we're going to continue building the structure of our homepage by creating two fragments. Fragments can be used in templates for pages, pieces, and widgets. They are useful for template code that is reused across multiple files, but also to organize complicated layouts by splitting the code into smaller, more manageable pieces. Fragments are very similar to nunchucks macros, but they support fetching data to add to the fragment asynchronously. We will visit this in the Creating Pieces tutorial. If you've watched the other videos in this series, you have likely either created your own project from scratch, or you are electing to follow along by switching between branches of our GitHub repository. If you're doing the latter, the code changes made in this tutorial are located in the branch sec2-2-pages. You can look at the README file of the repository to learn more about how to use it to follow along with this series. Creating a header. Our final project header will consist of two fragments, a top bar fragment and another containing the site navigation. The second fragment will be created in the navigation tutorial after we get the widgets and pieces to create the majority of our site content created. We will start with the top bar. This fragment will contain our logo, a search bar, and a subscribe button. Note that these last two items won't be made functional in this tutorial series. Switching over to the code editor, create a views/fragments/topbar.html file. I'm going to paste in some code that I copied from the written tutorial, and then I'll walk you through the relevant portions. There are three things of note within this file. First, all of the code is surrounded with fragment tags. The opening tag has a fragment name that looks a bit like a function name. That is because we can pass arguments in from our templates to be used within our fragments. Within our templates, we can use the render or render call tags to insert this fragment by importing the file and then passing the name, a bit like calling a function. Second, our logo link uses the data object to set the URL for the home page using data.home._URL. All pages and widgets can access the data.home property. While there is a slug property within data.home, we don't want to use this in case our user wants to localize the page. Instead, we are using the computed_URL property value. Looking into the database at the home page, we won't see the _URL property. Instead, this value is computed when the user requests the page. Lastly, the logo text and two placeholder texts look a little odd. The text for the logo and the two placeholders is computed using the __t template helper. Adding our text in using this helper allows us to perform static localization of our text strings. We will circle back to static versus dynamic localization in a later tutorial. For now, in order for our site to work, we need to create a new folder to contain our string translation files. There are multiple places we could store our translation strings, but in this case, the top bar is going to be used globally throughout our site, so it makes sense to put them in a project level @CMS/global module folder. When we create our navigation fragment, we will come back to the @CMS/global module and global settings. This module provides a useful place for allowing a user to enter content or alter settings that are used across your project. Back in the code editor, create a modules/@CMS/global/i18n folder. Within that folder, create an n.json file and add the following code. For each of the strings we are passing to the __t helper, we have a corresponding string that we want to add to the page. Now that we have localization strings added to our project, we need to provide locales for the project. These locales are most often different languages, countries, or combinations of the two. In some cases, it may also be appropriate to establish locales for people based on topical interests, professional categories, or cultural identities. Locales are configured through the @CMS/i18n module. Open the modules/@CMS folder and create an i18n folder with an index.js file inside and add the following code. This code is passing the locales property to the module options. That property should contain a named object for each locale we want to add to our project. The name for each object is a short identifier, typically a 2-letter language code, country code, or one of each with a dash separating them. For example, you might want one locale for French-speaking Canadians and another for English-speaking Canadians. In the code we added to our project, we are creating 2 locales, a base English locale with the short identifier EN, and a German or Deutsch locale with the short identifier DE. For the German locale, we are passing a prefix property. This prefix will be appended to the base hostname before the page path. For example, www.myprojectsite.com/de. We can also elect to use a different hostname for our localized content using the host name property. Each locale, except for the base locale, must have a prefix, a hostname, or both. Now that we have a second locale added, we need to add an additional JSON file containing the string translations. Open the modules/@CMS/global/i18n folder and add a de.json file. Add the following code. Again, our JSON file contains each of the translation strings as keys and their translations as values. We will circle back to look at our translations at the end of this tutorial when we can see both our top bar and our footer. We will place our footer.html fragment in the same folder as our topbar.html. For now, we are just creating a static footer. As we add our pieces and widgets, plus talk more about the global module, we will update this file. In the end, our footer will have 3 sections. The first section will be a set of navigation links that we will create in the navigation tutorial. The second center section will be for the display of selected reviews, and we'll create this in our pieces tutorial. And finally, the third section will have a subscribe field and some social links. We will add the social links in the navigation tutorial. Note that we won't be implementing any functionality for the subscribe field in this tutorial series. Switching back to the code editor, create the views/fragments/footer.html file. I'm going to paste in code from the written tutorial and walk you through the important sections. Again, we surround our markup with fragment tags and a name that we can use in our main template render call. The rest of this code is straightforward bootstrap markup that is dividing the footer into the 3 sections I described, plus an extra area at the bottom for our copyright information and privacy policy link. Now that we have created our fragments, we could use them in our modules @CMS, homepage, views, page.html file. However, since they are being used for the majority of our pages, we can also add them to our project level views/layout.html file. Open up this file, remove the existing content, and add the following code. As before, we are using data.outerLayout to extend the outerlayout.html file of the @CMS template core module. Next, we are using 2 import statements to import our fragments. Since these files are located in the project level views folder, we can reference them by passing in the subfolder and file name. If they are located elsewhere in your project, you would have to reference them using a relative path. The next section of code creates the content of the page title tag using the data object for either the piece or the page. The set tag is used to assign that value to the title variable using the OR logic operator. This works like a JavaScript OR, returning the value of the first true operand. This is all enclosed in the title block tags. Just below this, we are adding a before main block to add our top bar fragment within the header tags. To accomplish this, we use the render tag and pass it the name of the fragment file and the name of the fragment macro within the file. As we will see with the navigation fragment, we can include several fragments in the same file. We are also adding the opening of the main HTML element. Adding it here means that we reduce the need for super within templates that are adding content to the main block. Lastly, we close out the main markup element and add our footer fragment to the after main block. At this point, we can bring our site up. It won't look that great because we don't have any styling added yet. However, if we log in by appending login to our localhost URL and enter our credentials, we can still see the top admin bar and the contents of our top bar. If we open the Localization drop-down menu to the left of our login menu, we can see both of our locales listed. Selecting the Deutsch locale, we can see that the strings for our top bar and our admin UI change from English to German. Before leaving the topic of creating pages, I want to touch briefly on one alternative method for configuring your field schema. I bring it up in this tutorial because pages often contain multiple areas with complex but identical configurations. This project won't be utilizing the default page module that is present in the starter kit, but we can use it to show this additional way to configure your schema. Within our starter kit, there is a top-level lib folder with an area.js file that isn't utilized in the project. This file exports an area content field schema with each of the 4 core widgets added and some configuration of the rich text widget. This is a simple default export, but we will return to this in a later tutorial to see how we can use named exports to add a centralized library of schema fields. So how would this be used? Opening the modules default page index.js file, we can delete the existing widgets object and instead use our exported schema. In order to do this, we of course also need to require the file. You can see that this would provide considerable utility if we had a page with multiple areas. In these last 2 tutorials, we've navigated through the process of adding a page in an Apostrophe project. This was achieved by modifying the existing Apostrophe CMS homepage module, but in future tutorials, we will add pages through the creation of a new module and incorporation of the fresh type into the Apostrophe CMS page module. We also took an initial look at how to add and organize content schema fields. This is crucial because it's how you will allow users to enter content onto your pages. We primarily concentrated on the area schema field and core Apostrophe widgets when creating our 2 content areas. Moving forward, we will look at other schema field types, as well as conditionals and other options that regulate the content users can add to the page. While creating the main page layout template for our project, we also got an overview of template inheritance by looking at the core base layout file. This also gave us the opportunity to create reusable sections of code through fragments. We will look in future tutorials at using async components as an alternative. When creating our top bar fragment, we learned about localizing strings in our templates. In future tutorials, we will look at localizing our schema fields and admin UI. We will also touch on dynamic localization. Finally, we altered the main layout file to display our fragments, making use of the before main and after main blocks. At this point, we could add content to our site, but the majority of the homepage would look horrible. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at how to add assets like fonts and styling frameworks to our pages to begin to make them look like the completed project. If you have any questions about this tutorial or want more help starting your Apostrophe CMS project, please join our vibrant community in Discord. You can join right now by following the link in the comments. We hope that you will continue along with our tutorial series and subscribe to the other great videos in our channel.